Good day. Welcome to a long overdue episode of the Silverlight Show. I've been noticing the tide of anti-intellectualism, and it's puzzling to say the least. Most people claim that they value smart people. Most people say that they value innovation. They want to see progress happen. But then you talk to them and say something about, you have a degree, you have a diploma, whatever, and all of a sudden, their mentality ossifies. Oh, you've gone to college, university. You were taught to think a certain way. No, that is absolutely not what happens in college or university. Colleges and universities give you tools. They teach you methods and ways of thinking about problems. Now, there are experienced carpenters, they're experienced plumbers, and they've seen the same problem 1,000 times, and they can extrapolate what they've learned. Is that intelligence? Yes. Does it require a diploma? Not necessarily. There's a lot you can learn from being self-taught. Here's where the issue gets sticky. If you go to university and you take philosophy, they're in the first year, your first course, they're just giving you an overview. Immanuel Kant thought this way. Nietzsche thought this way. And then, after that, you can take further specializations. You can examine Nietzsche. You can look into Kant. You can look into existentialism. You can look at the literature surrounding that. You are specializing, but that's because that's a field of inquiry you're going into. Psychology. A lot of people are very attractive to cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And do you want to know why? It's not because it's the only thing out there, but it's measurable. It works. Not for me, but at the same token, I recognize I'm in the minority. The vast majority of people are very well helped, and having been through it, I can tell you the exercises are absolutely fantastic. They cause you to self-reflect. They cause you to look within. They say, this is my problem today. Where does it stem from? It's not, this is because in childhood my mother never got me the ice cream. That's a gross exaggeration of psychoanalysis. But the average person, without that knowledge, is going to assume, I heard this funny thing about Freud from Bugs Bunny in a cartoon from the 1940s, therefore it must be true. That's not the way intellectualism works. One of the common problems we have in society is we like things to fit into a neat little pattern. Humans are the symbolic animal. We have the body and structure of apes, great apes in particular, but our mind is very good at recognizing patterns. In all the studies they've done with chimpanzees, and these are the ones that speak, a million words of sign language, can form their own sentences. These are very intelligent animals. There's one interesting thing a chimpanzee or other higher life form has never done. It asks a question. Chimpanzees don't do that. They're very clever. I think it was Coco, the chimp that was, the brilliant one. They handed her a thermos. And she didn't say, what is this called? She said, metal drink cup. Hey, that's a pretty accurate explanation. But she didn't think to ask what the symbol for it was. She created her own. Now that's good and that's fantastic, but it would have probably been much easier for her to say, what is this? No, she was learning, she was showing intelligence, but she was not showing inquiry. This is what intellectualism actually is. It's about inquiries. Yes, we can apply different models of thought. We know basically how electricity and magnets work, but when you get down to the fundamental level, it becomes very different. We think electrons go along and kind of like weather, kind of like water, they flow downhill. They go to where the current is not. That is the prevailing theory. It's been tested, it fits a lot of models, and we build on that. Is it the ultimate model? No. But that's the thing. Intellectualism encourages continued inquiry. Again, a plumber probably has seen something similar, even though every single house is different, and knows the problem is the header, the gasket, whatever, is broken. This bit of PVC piping needs a little bit of glue, need to hold for 10 seconds. Oh yeah, this is very similar to something I saw back in 1998, so I'm going to use a similar solution. That's experience. Experience is absolutely valuable. But experience is the result of asking a question. What is wrong with this? What have I seen that is similar to this? So if you're saying you're anti-intellectual and you're dumping on universities, graduates, and college people and saying, oh, they only think one way in their specialty, you have failed to understand the fundamental point of intellectualism. Yes, we all know that example of the one person who's a brilliant philosopher, a brilliant physicist, but lacks social graces. And yeah, that stereotype does hold true in a certain number of things. However, there's how many people out there have an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration? Tons. If I wanted to and I had a job, I could have people lined up all down this road, all with MBAs looking for that job. Not because they're not intelligent, but because there's so many of them. And the degree is useful. It's all in what you do with it. If you decide to just sit back and follow trickle-down economics, your job market is probably not going to be very good. Whereas if you use that to develop a portfolio, you show that you have interests, and you work at different companies, you can parlay that MBA into a combination of your intellectual achievements of getting that piece of paper, which is an achievement, and your real-life experience. This is similar to the people with extremely high IQs. Now, I'm not making fun of them, but people go around and brag, my IQ is 130, 140, 150, whatever it might be. IQ is a measure of potential. Einstein and people like that had extremely high IQs, but they were also motivated. Professor Stephen Hawking, incredibly high IQ, but the important thing about him is he was given a countdown timer on his life. He knew, according to the wisdom of the time, he only had a limited amount of time to figure things out. So he applied his brain power and came up with interpretations of relativity nobody had even thought of before, because he was motivated. He was on a timeline. He was told his body wouldn't last long. Miraculously, it did last a long time, and he continued to make good discoveries. Einstein was motivated by the persecutions in Germany of Jewish people and intellectuals. Oh, did we just cross that bridge? Yes. Germany thought they would be clever by getting rid of the thinkers with wrong political leanings who didn't fit the Nazi ideal. Because of that, they lost a whole generation of Jewish physicists. They failed in a lot of their ambitions. They did some spectacular stuff, but because they rejected the worldview that was becoming basically consensus reality, the plans to prove the either never worked. He had some scientists that insisted we lived inside of the Earth rather than on top of it. But you know what? When it came time for them to target their V2s, they pulled out those old Jewish tables, and that's how they aimed. So your opinion of the facts don't matter. The facts are what matter. If somebody's an expert in a narrow area, they're still a genius in that particular area. We need to recognize that true intellectuals, people who have accomplished things, are a rare breed. I can line up IQ tests, I can administer them my own way, I can prove that all my friends are in the genius level. It depends on how I select the questions. That's not the point. I know among my friends who is, really smart and who has not quite reached their potential. I think all my friends are intelligent. They tend to ask intelligent questions. We all do stupid stuff. Every single person, whether you're, the the I can't even, the head proctor for the University of Miami, or whether you're Joe Blow flipping burgers. Doesn't make a difference. One of the neat things that we're seeing in the modern era is the democratization of intellectualism. Now, this is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it's more affordable for somebody with an idea to go out and do it. Let's just say you come up with the next big toy. Let's just say you come up with the next version of Lego. And you go out, you patent it, you get your 3D printers, you set it up, you sell it in toys, etc. This is a lot easier than it would have been 20 years ago when you'd have to go to an executive, show them your idea, sell that idea, and then the executive would cut you a deal. Nope, in this case, you can put your ideas to work. And that's showing your intellect, saying, here is my product, what do I need to do to get it out there? Practical intelligence is equally valuable as learned intelligence. But we need to stop mocking people for being intelligent. We need to stop mocking people for their accomplishments. I know people that have doctorates that are working below their potential, but there are reasons for that. Look at how many kids play basketball, and they dream about being in the NBA one day. Perfectly valid dream, and I wish them all success, but here are the numbers. There are precisely 400 jobs for players in the NBA, maybe 420. The population of North America is about 420 million. That's Canada, the United States, and Mexico, who all the kids have the exact same dream. Not including the kids from Britain, not including the kids from China, who all have that same dream. Your odds of making it to the NBA are literally 1 in a million. And that's raw population. That's not kids. That's if every single man, woman, and child all competed for the NBA, 1 in a million would be good enough. Now we break down to just the children, and the odds are even worse. Because after 5 decades on this planet, I'm tall, I'm good at defending, and I can push the ball forward. I've never been good at shooting baskets. So while I have a lot of good skills, I'm definitely not NBA quality. And my cardio is a little bit off. But since I'm not an elite athlete, does that mean I can't enjoy sports? Does that mean I can't go out and play a little 5-on-5, a little 1-on-1 with my friends? No. And you can still have intellectual conversations with your inner group. Shooting that down is almost willfully admitting your arrogance and your ignorance. Remember, it's important to be able to ask the question. And intellectualism is recognizing there is a question to be asked. So, next time somebody turns around and says, oh, you have a fancy bit of paper and you can't think outside that box, remember, they've already seen the other models. They have chosen a model they think applies, but there's other options out there. They're applying something that they have been successful with in the past when they apply themselves. Just sitting back and saying, I don't want to go to college. You're perfectly fine with that. And maybe you're the best darn plumber the world has ever seen. Sorry for picking on plumbers. Got a lot of respect for plumbers. Plumbing is a skill I'm not great at. I'm good at carpentry. I'm good at welding. I'm good at electronics. I'm good at a whole lot of things. Plumbing, I can do it. I have the knowledge, but for some reason, I don't have the fine motor coordination to really put things together. So I respect plumbers. I'm picking on them because it's a skill I personally don't have. I have the skill. I don't have it to a professional level. So imagine saying, the plumber doesn't know what he's doing, despite the fact they have 20, 30 years of experience and training and everything else. That would be ludicrous. The gas fitter doesn't know what he's doing. I'm going to do it myself. This is how a lot of accidents happen. Don't become a statistic. Embracing questions and embracing the intellectual expression of those questions is becoming a rare skill. We accept answers. When we have a problem, most people go online and, with their search engine of choice, look up a video on how to. Some people say that's lazy, but they're asking a question. They're at least taking inspiration from the video. More intelligent people, more experienced people will watch 4 or 5 of them and say, oh, this approach works. I can do this. but this step I can't do. But if I look at this other video, there's a step I can borrow from there. That's intellectual, using your intelligence to solve a problem. You're putting multiple modes in, and you're using your capacity to create the best model for you. Anti-intellectualism is denying that and assuming the first video has all the answers. And sometimes the first video will. You might get lucky, but it's always good to dig a little deeper, look for another answer, and then evaluate them. Let's fight against this tide of anti-intellectualism because it's doing nobody any good. Let's start recognizing that being intellectual, being smart has a place. Don't point at the high IQ people that have failed, because you're going to fail at almost anything sooner or later. Again, I suck at plumbing. Doesn't mean I don't know how to do it. I can diagnose problems. I can figure out what's wrong most of the time. I just am not, I don't have the experience. I don't have the dexterity. I don't have that practiced hand. I admire plumbers. Carpentry. I love to see good carpentry. I can do a lot of carpentry. I spent 2 months this year doing nothing but carpentry. But ultimately, am I on the skill of those people that restore medieval masterpieces? Heck no. And I got no problem saying that. And that's the ultimate point of intellectualism, being self-aware. I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. I have a buddy who just authored a paper on artificial intelligence. It's a brilliant paper. But at the same token, he's suffering from cancer. Now, is he bad because he got cancer? No. They're unrelated. But at the same token, some people say, how come you weren't smart enough to prevent yourself from getting cancer? Two unrelated fields. And by trying to sit back and saying, oh, he's not so smart, that's the same thing as anti-intellectuals are trying to do. They're trying to sit back and say, haha, you have one weakness, therefore you're not that smart. We are in a very interesting position in society. There's this jealousy going around. There's this fear. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. And that's what anti-intellectualism really is. I can't do algebra. Believe me, I just found out I need to review my algebra. So therefore, people who do it are doing something useless and wasting their time. I'm using my time productively by drinking beer and watching the Miami Dolphins. I'm making that up. I have no idea what you're doing in your particular life. But that's the same idea. I know people that can recite sports scores and trivia from the 1980s, and it is an impressive ability. It's not particularly something I'm interested in, but at least I recognize it. Whereas some people are like, you're an expert in one area, you know nothing else. You're choosing not to recognize that person's other qualities. You're an anti-intellectual because you're covering up for your own insecurities. Let's start realizing that intellectuals are not a problem, certainly not compared to some of the anti-intellectuals that are in positions of power. And let's start working towards a world where people are valued for their contributions. People are valued for their potential. And maybe, just maybe, we can start embracing a wider diversity of intellectual abilities. With that, thank you for joining us on the Silverlight Show. I am working on a different channel, which will come up, but I have to navigate a lot of things on text-to-speech and similar ideas because I don't like my voice reading out things. I stumble too much, I butter too much. It's not in my skill set. But see, I recognize that. There's text-to-speech software, but if you use it, you have to declare you had AI Assist on Google. There's a way around this, I'm sure. I'm working on it, but at least I asked the question. We thank you for joining us. Like, share, subscribe, all the things everybody asks you to do, and we hope you have a fantastic day.